to call this meeting to order at 7:04. Can we get a roll call, please?
Good evening, everyone, and Happy New Year. Mr. Ocampo?
Here.
Ms. Wall? Ms. Nathan? Mr. Murphy?
Here.
Ms. Lahana? Mr. Lee?
Here.
Mr. Ochbinti? Mrs. Zane Garrett? Ms. Tejada?
Here.
Ms. Salahuddin?
Here. All right, so to lead us in the pledge is Mr. Ocampo. Would you lead us, please?
Of course. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. So please get approval for the agenda if there is no changes. Dr. Lord?
Move to approve the agenda?
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Approved. So we're going to move straight into Student of the Month. Tossing it over to Ms. Basuino. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Yeah. I'll try not to. Good evening, board, members of the board, all you peeps. My girl right there. Jefferson High School District Student of the Month program is designed to recognize the many outstanding achievements within the school and in the community of students of our district. Selected by their teachers and administrators, the Student of the Month exemplifies the degree of academic achievement, leadership, and community consciousness we would like to see in all of our students. Since only 5 of the roughly 4,200 students in our district received this recognition, being chosen as Student of the Month is quite an honor. Tonight we will be recognizing the 2019-20 January Student of the Month. Please join me in welcoming Caitlin Elizabeth Owl, a senior at WESTMOOR High School. Here tonight with Caitlin are her parents, Naomi and Paul. Caitlin has been a 4-year member of student government, 3-year class president, and has been working hard this year to try and create a more positive campus culture through student tours to our prospective 9th grade students in the week of gratitude right before Thanksgiving. She is a role model to students at WESTMOOR and is highly regarded by her peers and staff. That was written by the principal. I also got, which I thought was amazing, was Caitlin's resume. And I'm going to show it to you all because it's amazing. And my staff wants her to now write everybody else's resumes on campus. So I'm just going to read it to you because it's just so great. So, experiences: Target, Colma. Cashier, guest services. And under that shows communicate with and delegate tasks to colleagues. Work with and provide resolutions for frustrated guests. Build team camaraderie. Exhibit strong knowledge of products and needs, wants of guests. Maintain a clean and organized storefront. Portola Family Dentistry, San Francisco, front desk receptionist, June 16 to present. Manage reception area. Greet patients and respond to patient requests for information. Maintain digital and paper files. Manage dentist daily schedule. Restock and inventory product. Daly City Baseball Association, Daly City Volunteer Coordinator, volunteer work June 17 to June 19. Planned, developed, and facilitated summer baseball camp events. Contacted community volunteers to garner support and participate in officiating baseball games. Outlined game schedules and track volunteer hours. Managed concession stand and earnings. WESTMOOR High School Homework Center, Daly City Peer Tutor, August 2016 to May 2018. Tutored science, mathematics, and Spanish. Communicated with peers facing academic challenges. Facilitated a safe, open learning environment for students. Provided students with the study techniques and tips that resulted in improved academic performance. Initiated communication between teachers and individuals with academic concerns. Extracurricular, student government, class of 2020 vice president 1 year and president 2 years. Influence student culture by motivating peers, encouraging creative thinking, and leading by example. Implement change by creating channels for individuals to share their thoughts and opinions. Plan school-wide rallies and dances. Advise underclassmen socially and academically. Education, Westmoor High School, Daly City, student 2016 to present, 4.18 GPA. AP courses, biology, language, composition, macroeconomics, government, calculus AB, psychology. Expected graduation date, May 2020. Skills, public speaking in front of large audiences. Proficiency in video and photo editing using iMovie and Adobe programs. Knowledge and application of Google Drive. Conversational Spanish speaker. Conflict resolution skills. Hello, I'm ready to hire her. Caitlin states that she has applied to many UCs and that she thinks she's going to major in biology. So please congratulate Caitlin. Congratulations. Come on up.
Thank you.
Who's giving this to her?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I'll take it.
You are.
There you go.
Here you go. Just a hand off, hand off.
The handoff.
Congratulations, thank you so much. So we're gonna take a picture.
Can you take a picture?
And I'll
Oh,
take
yeah.
a picture of
I
you.
prepped them.
Yeah, she's one of my best. And
For Amanda.
advise them on baseball.
Students, do you want to take a picture?
Yeah, sure.
You take pictures with this one. Okay, 1, 2, 3.
All right, my turn. 1, 2, 3. Nice.
I'm just taking it back.
One more. Portrait mode.
I've been told.
Wide angle.
Thank you.
I did a bunch.
Great. I know how to do a resume.
Yes. So before we move on, do we want to open it up? Did you guys want to say anything to her before we move on?
Congratulations. I mean, that's an impressive resume. And I too would hire you on the spot. In fact, I'm looking for another accountant, and so your skill set would certainly work well in my department. So congratulations, well done, and good luck to you.
Congratulations, Caitlin. I'm so proud of you. You represent our district so well and Westmoor High School. This is a, oh my God.
I told you.
Kate, you got to put this on the recording because this is a really nice looking resume. Just a hint of color. I mean, and you helped bring baseball back to Daly City. Is that Daly City Baseball Association is one of my friends' passions that they're trying to bring baseball back here, and that you're one of the ones who organized them. I'm sure it's part of their success. But congratulations, and we're looking forward to hearing great things from you in the future.
And I third, congratulations. Congratulations to the parents. The parent isn't easy, and so you guys have done a fantastic job. And there's a lot of adults that are in need of resume skills. So you could get a side business teaching how to conduct putting a resume together. And the other thing I just wanted to say is, being a teenager, and especially a senior in high school, junior and senior in high school right now, is extremely challenging. There's so much work that's put upon you guys. So for you to exceed at this level is truly remarkable. So thank you so much for coming out tonight. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
All right. Moving on to communications.
Don't feel like you have to stay, you have homework. So.
Yeah. Yeah, we're just gonna get through this. Moving into our board report, we'll start with our student trustees, Mr. Ocampo.
All right. Yeah, nothing much to report. Everyone just got back from winter break. Everyone's getting back into the grind of things. seniors are getting closer and closer to graduation, and more of us are starting to feel it. And so that's really it.
Mr. Murphy?
Like John said, not a whole lot. We just got back. Soccer and basketball teams had games over the break, as well as the wrestling team had a few tournaments. I think, overall, pretty successful, just to kind of get started in the season for those guys. The biggest thing we noticed when we got back was the walkway construction that has been a project for quite some time now was finally completed as they removed their temporary wooden rails on those walkways and finally put in some metal ones. So that project is finished, which is good to see that we're finally all good with that.
It was a good break. It was fun to actually start the break by popping into the DO's holiday party. So it was just kind of fun to say hello, spend about a half hour with staff, and see the insanity of the various holiday hats. So that's always a lot of fun. And it's been a good break, actually, just to not think about stuff and just spend time with family. So.
That was a really good break. I celebrated my dad's 97th birthday. And, yeah. But, during the holidays, just there's so many different gatherings that we have. And I was helping Jefferson coordinate their gift wrapping fundraiser at the mall. So, while I'm on my holiday party for my firm in Austin, I'm helping organize volunteers, but, as a Jefferson parent. But it's great to get back into the swing of things. I'm looking forward. I can't believe it's January and that we're going to finish up this year soon, and that my daughter will be driving in the fall. So stay away from her. But, and it's good to start with my dear friend as our president. I'm really excited. Sorry, Eddie, but you're great.
Excited now. Dr. Deloria?
So, Happy New Year to everybody. I must confess, I didn't do much work over break. There were a couple of mornings where I woke up and I couldn't remember what day of the week it was. That's always a really nice thing. School opened without incident, which is great. All the, given the weather that we had, we didn't have any issues until after school. One of our schools lost some power after school today, but everything was back online. So we had a good opening. And something really exciting happened today that hasn't happened in this district perhaps ever. I want you to look over there at Kareem and Tony. They met with Miss Casey and Miss Basuino, and they hammered out the calendar for all of our events for next year. So we've had some challenges with that. So they've put together a calendar that has not only the back to school, the first day of school, when the PSAT SAT day is, when the district fair is, when all the open houses are, what am I missing here?
My birthday, it's February 7th.
There's like a big picture. But it's all done. We're going to show it to the principals next Tuesday to get feedback from them, and the goal is to have it ready so that all of our partner districts and all of our partners have that so they can do their planning for next year as well. So parents will know when graduation is next year. They'll know when the orientation is for all the schools in August. So I'm just really proud of that. Thank you very much.
Awesome. So the only thing I have to report is that this Saturday is the San Mateo County School Boards Association Legislative Day. We have all our state legislators coming, and all of the candidates for State Senate seat 13, Jerry Hill seat. So we'll have a full day having conversations with all of our legislators. So I'm hoping everyone can come. And student trustees, again, if you're available, I would love to have you there as well. I will have the information sent to you one more time to see if you can come register, because we would love to have them hear from our students too. So with that,
They need rides, maybe they can carpool with me.
yep, more than willing. Yeah, because I have to be there really early, so you don't want to carpool with me. All right. superintendent report. I did
mine.
anything else? Okay, cool. AFT Local 1481.
I just have one little thing. As most of you know, I've mentioned before, we are collecting signatures to get Schools and Community First on the ballot for November 2020. So you have to collect the signatures based on the county that people are in. So if anyone is interested in helping out with that, it's just to get it on the ballot, and then we'll be voting for it in November if we can get it on the ballot. So it will increase funding for schools and communities.
Okay. All right, moving on to consent agenda. Can I get a motion to approve if no one has anything to pull?
Move to approve consent.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. All right. Public comment, any blue cards?
No blue cards.
Okay, moving on to public comment to discussion items. We have our one item, which is our Circle Up update. I will turn that over to
It's me?
Yes.
Yes, already.
Oh dear. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Am I doing this right?
Happy New Year. You can relax. This is a friendly group today.
Okay.
Friendly and safe.
Good Lord.
Andy unleashed here.
All right. Well, hello, everybody. I'll just kind of look around as I present, I guess. Happy New Year. It's nice to see some of your faces. It's been a while. I'm happy to be invited here today to give you an update on what's been going on in the world of JUHSD through the lens of Circle Up. And so I plan to give you kind of a brief general update, and then I want to make sure to leave room for questions. So, yeah. So to give a brief recap, that's me. I've cut my hair since then. I think your hair's longer since, yeah, maybe. So a quick recap of where we were, and then we'll talk about where we are and then where we're going. So we started out with the district early last year, and the intention of our work was around three main areas, I would say, around, if you all remember, the sites reached out to us in a really organic way, individually, and also we were approached by the district back when Keith was still here, all for different reasons. Some sites really wanted some work and support around how to address staff climate and morale. Others wanted to look more specifically around power and privilege and diversity, and then also the district reaching out to support on how to address significant disproportionate discipline. And so, and also looking at equity. And we started out last year in August with 4 sites, all sites except WESTMOOR, and since then this year started out with WESTMOOR. And so for my updates today, I'll give you some brief updates about what's happening at all 5 sites. All of them have a separate focus, but if you remember, the work within Circle Up is 3 main areas around relationships and inclusion, diversity and equity work, and then also conflict resolution. And so we're touching on all of those things at each of the sites. It's just dependent on where their needs are and how to funnel in through their language. And so, brief update on the sites. I'll share a little bit about what we've been doing in the all admin training session, so that's district and site admin, and then the work we're doing in the higher level with the discipline matrix. And to give you kind of like an image, I feel like what we're doing in the district right now is like there's 3 separate roads, but all of the roads eventually lead to one place. So we'll start with where we are. Thornton was just there today actually doing a training, and our focus for Thornton this year is really looking at diversity and equity, and with a purpose of looking at the different ways that equities or inequities exist within the school culture and systems within the school, and also how to shift the way that we look at discipline. And so I've been working with all staff, doing all staff trainings, including staff who work in the office, campus safety, registrar, also doing classroom coaching around staff who need some support on how to implement different restorative practices to utilize with their students. And also working one-on-one with Denny around how to address and move the school forward, and address any other issues that come up along the way. And we've been gathering data at all of the schools, so with Thorne, we've seen a really big increase in terms of staff trust. And it's always tricky at Thorne, right? Because there's only like 15 staff, so anything that happens really shifts the data. So this is comparison from May of last year compared to December, which was last month. And there is also an increase in students respecting each other's social identities. And that was data gathered from the students specifically. And so where we're going next is looking more deeply at discipline values, the practices that they have in place, and then how to create an equity lens in order to reassess the practices they have at Thornton. Are you bored yet? Okay. So next, Jefferson. Our focus there is really looking at staff-to-staff relationships, given that they are such a big staff community and there's a lot of new staff, looking at how do we build a sense of trust so that we can actually get the work done. And then also looking at conflict resolution, both in terms of building the staff capacity and admin capacity for this, as well as the students. So I actually have been working with Mr. Vega there and also Yvette Yambao in training the students on the same practices that the admin are learning. So I'll give you more on that later. But we've been doing all staff training. We have a staff and a student climate committee. So the staff climate committee meets, I would say, like, they're so willing, like more than once a month. And the intention is really looking at the data and how to increase trust and relationships among staff. And we've seen a significant increase. We originally were thinking about for this year how to develop a team of staff members so that when crises do happen, that staff they have like groups that they can already go to. But that was just challenging to get off the ground. So then we shifted gears and said, how can we at least put things in place so staff can build a sense of knowing or trust with each other in small ways, whether that's like in staff meetings or they realize that what was lacking was like a central place for teachers and staff members to get together, so they even like revamped the staff lounge and made that something more meaningful for them. I've also been doing some admin and coaching support, as well as conflict resolution capacity building. So there have been some student, I guess, conflicts or fights, you could say, right? And so recently I've been working more directly with the admin and looking at how can we look at these situations differently and respond to them differently, and not just maybe separating the students, but actually finding ways to assess what they need, what are the root causes that are causing these like tensions, and then how do we address them. So we're making moves on that. And the staff climate committee had set out some different goals in terms of where they wanted to improve their data points, which interestingly enough, they have already almost past those goals around trust, creating a supportive work environment. I mean, there's more, but I didn't want to overwhelm the text on the PowerPoint. Yeah, super proud of where they are compared to where they started. And where we're going next at Jefferson is looking at how to embed restorative practices and routines into staff routines, and then how to incorporate relationship building in the classroom. And what's come up recently is how to embed restorative practices into new initiatives that are coming up, like how do we make PLCs collaborative and meaningful for people, and not feel like what we're doing at Circle Up or in terms of staff climate is separate from anything else, that it's just a part of the Jefferson way. Terra Nova. Oh, did I miss one? So at Terra Nova, Meg and I have been thinking about how to merge, build what we have, what we've repaired in terms of staff climate and combined with PBIS. And so we're looking at how to prevent conflicts through identifying and establishing school-wide expectations. And we're trying to do that in a restorative way, so not just the teachers determining this is how students should be during off-campus events or in the classroom, but how can it also come from the students so that there's a sense of ownership there. And so we're in the process of working with staff and students to develop those things. We also have a staff and student climate committee who is leading the work, and the staff climate committee is also trying to maintain the practices that it put in place last year. So like a few changes that they made, which were really small but had a big impact, were like moving staff meetings from the theater to the cafeteria because it felt more collaborative, incorporating like small openings so that there's like check-ins for staff before they actually start that's led by another staff member, a mindful minute. And so maintaining some of those small habits that we've started to introduce last year. And then the theme of the expectations is looking at values. Like their big theme is Tiger Pride, but what does Tiger Pride actually mean and look like? So we've identified different circumstances like the cafeteria, like the hallways, sporting events, and breaking down what would Tiger Pride look like in practice, not just for students, but also for staff members. With OCEANA, we are continuing the work around power and privilege. Last year we spent a lot of time developing a common language, experiential activities for everybody to be on the same page around what power, privilege, equity, unconscious bias means. And this year really looking at how do we put that into practice, into expectations. So it's interesting because it's similar to what Terra Nova is doing, but it's in a different lens, right? Because their values is around power and privilege, but the outcome is also still around inclusion. And so that's how it's been being adapted to OCEANA. And they also have a lot of new staff, so the work that we did in November of last month was kind of a refresher, and then we're going to be going deeper into looking at how power, privilege, and inclusion shows up in terms of different staff interactions. How does power and privilege play out in staff meetings, whose voices are heard or not heard? How does it play out in terms of communications in the office? And then what do we want to put in place of that? And then last site is WESTMOOR. So with WESTMOOR, we, based on the place that where they are at in terms of their climate, we took a little bit of a different approach, because our approach before was like, you know, give us your data. What are the challenges? Let's identify those challenges together, and then let's develop a team on how to work through those issues. But what we've done is, in our first kind of introduction with the staff in August, I wanted to hear from them directly around what they felt like their needs are. And they each, every single, I think there was like 100 people in this giant circle that we had, got a chance to share what they need to feel to have an awesome year. So what do they need from their administrators? What do they need from their fellow staff members? What do they need from Circle Up? And what do they need from themselves? A lot of people overwhelmingly put communication. And so I took that back to not only admin, but also the positive school culture team that they had, and said, look, this is what your colleagues said, they need communication, but what does that mean? And even them themselves couldn't agree upon what that meant. Are we talking about how staff communicate with each other? Is it administrators to staff? And so we developed a collaboration together where staff actually had a chance to have small group discussions around communication challenges, things that have come up in the past that maybe were never addressed, and then what they needed in terms of what they need and what they could do in order to improve communication. And that gave us a really, really much more specific list in terms of like the hang-ups that were going on. And so the positive school culture team was already established before Circle Up was got there. I think it was with was it Denny? What was Danny?
Danny Chu.
Danny Chu, right. And so, so now we're co-leading that there. And now, I guess what you can how you can label the process is kind of really diagnosing the issues in order to identify what the root cause is so that we can actually come up with solutions and not like Band-Aids or practices of what I think they should do, but really what's going on for them. And so we've been doing some staff training. The next one is coming up in February, developing the Positive School Culture Committee, giving them a chance to not only diagnose the issues but also recommend solutions, which would then be not only looked at by administrators but also leadership, and also shared out with the staff, admin coaching support, and then peer assistance also. So similar at Jeff, the peer assistance program said like, yeah, we have these mediation practices, but it doesn't really resolve a problem. Like the students just say like, we just won't talk to each other, but then that never works. And so I've been working with Joel there to share some restorative justice practices, and he's been actually infusing them into the curriculum to teach to the students. So that's going to be part of their system in addressing conflict as well. So our next steps at WESTMOOR are looking at how to address the communication challenges there, sharing them back with the staff, and also discipline is a really big pain point at WESTMOOR. And so with our next kind of upcoming time with the staff, we're going to be engaging them in some conversations around trying to shift values and think more critically about intentions when it comes to discipline. Yeah. And so with the district, where we're going next is looking at equity is a really big, it's part of what you're doing here. And a huge part of how equity exists or doesn't exist is through how conflicts are addressed and students are excluded or pushed out. And so we're addressing this on two different levels. We realized administrators they have good intentions, they don't want to suspend, they want to keep the students around, but they don't quite know how to resolve or address the conflicts, or they don't have time to. And so this year our sessions with all admin have been around giving them tools on how to alternative tools to put out fires in a way that will both prevent them and repair the community when they happen. And so they're learning different tools and skills related to restorative justice for addressing root causes, repairing a community after a crisis has happened, and also doing so with an equity lens. And doing that means that I'm not giving out consequences, is really talking to the people involved and seeing what they need in order to move forward. Different tools to address conflict. So making sure it's not like a spray bottle to put out a forest fire, nor is it more gasoline to add more fuel, because sometimes that happens unintentionally. And then last is we are working at the district level to create a new discipline matrix, which embodies all of the values that you all have in order to better serve students. So traditional discipline matrices, they say like this is the offense and this is the response. This is the second response if it happens again, and this is the third one. But in critically analyzing that model, that assumes that conflicts are going to happen again, which then implies that the intention of traditional discipline matrices are not to address the root causes, it's just to give a consequence. And so with this new discipline matrix, we're embedding different stages to addressing a conflict, which is before you respond to a conflict, first assess it. What type of conflict is it, and what type of tool do I need? Do I need a hose? Do I need a spray bottle? Do I need a bucket? And that's how we're being equitable, right? Because we're looking at what the needs are, and not putting out, a tiny little campfire with something really huge or more gasoline. And so the intention of the new discipline or solution matrix is to institutionalize addressing conflicts equitably, and embedding restorative justice practices so that when a conflict happens, that we're not just responding to it, but we're also repairing the community and we're preventing it from happening again. And so the new discipline, the Discipline Matrix Committee is made up of site admins, admin at the district, and then teacher representation. And the goal is that we can institutionalize conflict resolution so that all conflicts are addressed and their root causes, and the community is repaired after a conflict happens. And the intention is to make it really easy for any administrator to do, and that the process is transparent. So we're looking at how to make all of these tools and resources digital, so it's easily accessible and all families and parents know what to expect when they get a call and their student is in trouble. And so we're hoping to complete kind of the preliminary creation of the matrix by the end of the year, and then start to share it out to get some feedback next year so that we can look at how to roll it out. That might be a little bit ambitious, but a tentative timeline, very ambitious, very, okay. So, and then how this actually gets implemented in the sites is going to look super different. How we approach and share this is going to look different from, you know, between Westmoor and Jefferson to Thornton. And so part of the planning and rolling out will be developing that too, because we're not just going to say here it is and implement it. It's going to be happening in a really thoughtful manner. Your turn.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I'm going to open it up for questions or comments.
In the work you've been doing so far across the different sites, are you finding staff understanding what equity actually is instead of it just being a buzzword?
Absolutely. I mean, I think there's one thing to know what it is. There's another, I mean, there's different levels. Like, I know what the word means, that is different from equality. There's another level to it, which is how am I perpetuating equity or inequities, and how am I a part of that system? And then I think there's another level of, okay, so this exists and how do we actually change it?
That second question, how am I perpetuating it? I mean, has that been coming up in the different meetings and trainings you've had?
I would say at Thorn we're having like lots of deep conversations about it. We talked about it today. I would say at Jefferson, yeah, it was interesting because I got to share some comparison data with the staff, and that was something that they mentioned a lot. Because I was asking about trust, but they had brought up the training that I did on equity and how that was really eye-opening for them. I would say at OCEANA, they're definitely looking at it in terms of staff to staff, and I think they're wanting to look at that in like as collegial relationships before they look at it with students, because they want to model that work. At Westmoor, we haven't quite gotten there. We're probably furthest there, but I think it'll be happening soon. Who did I leave out? Terra Nova. At Terra Nova, we haven't had that conversation yet, but are they looking at equity? Yes, they are, and part of that is soliciting feedback from the entire community around expectations and norms. But yeah, we're anticipating in our roadmap that will be happening like next year.
And as far as the schools where you did survey the staff, what's that participation rate been like?
Yeah, so we've surveyed all of the schools. I would say at Westmoor we haven't done a comparison, we just have baseline data. And with OCEANA we have data from there also, but it didn't pertain specifically to what was presented in terms of their focus, and there's been shifts in staff also, so I wanted to kind of take that into consideration. Yeah.
With the schools that you do have the data, I mean, did you have a high percentage of
Oh,
participation?
yes. Absolutely. Terra Nova, I do a lot in terms of pushing them. I send out emails with GIFs and memes like last chance, and it's like a squirrel. Anyway, so yes, yes. With Terra Nova staff, it's about 40. Jefferson has been a consistent like 65, 60. Thornton is about 12. OCEANA about 45-ish. Yeah.
Okay.
That's quite a bit.
Yeah. And we've, not as often or frequently, but we have some data from students also. So the teachers have been helping us to get some of that. Yeah.
I was just gonna ask how you guys, because the data looks good. I mean,
Yeah.
Overall improvement, that's good. Good upward trend overall. Yeah, I was just wondering how you guys were getting that data, who's it coming from, and what form. But it sounds like surveys are probably your main way of going about that, and that's good that you're starting to get a little bit from students and stuff, just to make sure it's consistent overall. I think that's probably good, because you don't want staff to be like, yeah, it's really good, and students to be like, no, it got worse.
Yeah, those are the fun conversations we have. Like when we compare the two, yeah, it gets them thinking a lot. Yeah, the data that we collect is through a Google form, so I send out a link. Sometimes we make flyers for it, but the admin are really helpful to either give staff time to fill it out during a meeting or department chair meeting or department meeting, or I'll be really good at sending kind of emails, begging them. Yeah.
So I wanted to, we've had staff turnover. So do you find that has been a challenge in, like you said, there was a refresher that you did in November?
Is it a challenge? It is a challenge, but it's not like a roadblock. I think, for instance, like it requires us to continually reinforce our message and our vision, which I'm seeing is like, oh yeah, I need to, like at Jefferson, for instance, I think they started to get like, in thinking about like the PLCs and how to distribute collaboration time, some of the conversation was like, well, we have our circle up and we have to do this, like what do we get rid of, or, and I think it's about, when I think about turnover, one thing is like keeping the message consistent and continuing to reinforce the message around what is our bigger vision, and not just how it's separate, like this is something separate that you're doing, but how it ties into everything else that you're doing together. And then also I think it creates a necessity for the schools to get creative in terms of how they continue this work on their own. And I think that's where the coaching support comes in for me, because I'm like, an admin, like how are you, you have new students, you have new staff members, how are we creating time for them to get to know each other, even if it's just like 5 minutes. Yeah, so it's a factor. Yeah.
So I have a lot of questions, sorry.
Okay.
Just a heads up. So,
the question on data was something I was really interested in too, so that was good information to have. So when you have the data, like we had when was the first meeting at Westmore? What date? It was in August.
August.
So when you have that meeting and you get that feedback, how is that communicated back to the district office?
Like the
We have a meeting and we hear like everyone saying communication is an issue. When you hear that, is that reported back to the DO, or does that stay with you?
It stays with me right now. Like even coming in.
Right, but
Communication.
right, but I think for me, like when we walked into our site meeting, it would have been helpful for me to know that had happened, because I kind of walked in there blind. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, honestly, that was one of the things, because I was anticipating like one of the questions might be like, what am I seeing as like feedback or needs? And I feel like that might be one thing of like, how do I phrase this? Because a challenge is like how to allow the sites to have agency.
Right.
And then also there's definitely some communication that's needed from the districts and sites too to dispel all of the misunderstandings that exist that perpetuate the perceptions that you all have about each other that might not be true. But I feel like that is a really big need in terms of not only repairing past harm that might just be a result of a lot of misunderstandings or miscommunication, and also how to proactively address that in the future. Like there's a gap right there.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, and I do understand that there needs to be a level of autonomy so people feel like you're not there to just take information and report back to us like that, but how is there some way in that data in aggregate that's not too specific to individual, or where there's like a huge red flag, is there a way that can be communicated back to the DO so that's something that we can start thinking about and working on as well?
I think so. Absolutely. I mean, I'm thinking about WESTMOOR and some specific things that they've shared with me, right? I could easily say hey, that would be really useful for the district. Could I share that information? And they could say yes, they could say no, and then I think that's reasonable.
Awesome. And then so each site has specific services that are working for, is that a joint? Do you come up with those specific targets or goals as a group, or is that you going through the data and saying, this is what I feel like the sites?
It's a combination. It's based on their data, based on a debrief of the data with either all of the staff combined, or their climate or leadership teams, and with admin also.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then for different groups are coming, or different sites are coming up with committees. Mm-hmm. So do they determine how the committees are put together? Is there instruction given on this is what the makeup should be? And then the reason why I'm asking this question is that it's always the same people working on this, and those aren't the people I need to convert. Do you know what I mean? So how do we get it out of, that's probably the people that are answering the survey, right? It's the other 50% at each school is usually the group that I feel like haven't been touched, aren't responding, and those are the ones we need to reach. And usually it's not those folks that are on the committee in getting a lot of the information. So that's is there guidance given on how the committee makeup should be, and what communication within the committee should be site-wide? That was a lot. I'm so sorry.
No, I think there's a couple of layers to the question. One was the makeup of the committees. Is there directive that we give on that, or requirements?
Yeah.
And then second was the flow between the committees and the rest of the school.
Right. So it doesn't stay, because I've seen what happens in the past is that it either comes from the DO or comes from the site. There's a directive or there's energy towards a specific thing, and the people who understand the thing and the people who are energized or already have the buy-in are always the people that are on the committee and working on it. And unfortunately, all the communication about it usually stays within that group.
Right.
And then, so that's usually the 40% that's answering the survey, right? Or the 65% that's answering the survey.
Yes.
But the issue is the 35 or the 40% at each site, which is usually the most vocal folks when it comes to negative things. And they don't get any information, they're not on the committee, so they don't. So how do we bridge those two groups, and is there instruction given to how do we get outside of this bubble?
Yes. So I think a couple of things to answer that. Is there a requirement for the makeup of the committee? No, because they're volunteering, I guess you can say. But the communication is not, I'm not depending on them to give out the communication. They might be helping me brainstorm, and I'm helping them brainstorm, but we're still leading the work. And we're communicating back to the staff. They might just say but maybe you should phrase that a little bit differently, or couch it this way so that it's more, it's received better. And then The other thing is what you're saying about like, yeah, you develop a team and that team knows everything, but then it stays there and it doesn't get out to the rest. So I feel like I agree. And I think that's exactly why we're doing what we're doing with like Terra Nova. Like PBIS, like people are like, what's PBIS? Like, what are we doing? And there's like a team that was trained who knew all about it. And so I was like, let's just take off the PBIS. Like the goal is that we're looking at school-wide expectations. So let's just involve everybody in that process to name what what they want out of it. So even if they are against it, they're not against saying what they want from students and from each other. And so we're just like removing that completely. Yeah.
The discipline guiding team, that's the district level. What is the makeup of that? Like, how many teachers are on that? How many?
There's one teacher and there's Monica. Yeah.
Yeah, so that
There's
probably.
a couple, there's a campus, there's attendance, dean of students.
Okay.
And then a couple teachers. Yeah, and Monica.
Okay. So what is, so so discipline.
There's a lot to
Yeah.
that. There's a lot of
Yes.
layers and a lot of stages to it, and like there's like the site level understanding of it that we have to move and shift, which I feel like we're doing on the site level. There's also like the bigger picture, like structure and infrastructure that we have to create, and also developing the capacity of the people who are going to be carrying that out with administrators. So yeah.
And so the conversation that we just had, like that's another, like I have the same concern about this discipline matrix group, right? That the couple of teachers that are in this are going to understand the gospel, but how do we get that out to the broader group and get their buy-in understanding before we roll out anything?
Yes. I definitely agree, and I think that's when we're gonna come into play. Like, for instance, based on where the sites are, we're going to, and we as in like Circle Up, tailoring the different trainings or collaboration or PDs to get them critically analyzing what discipline means, what they want out of it, and how maybe what they want isn't actually what they're getting.
Right.
So, you know, when I ask people, like, what do you want when it comes to discipline practices at your school, usually people say, like, I want the problem to go away, I want the student to know what they did wrong and have some empathy, and I want the behavior to stop. And then I ask them, like, are those practices, like, what do you have in place that actually produces that outcome that's institutionalized? And usually they say, well, we don't have anything. Like, even suspension doesn't even do that. I'm like, exactly. So why do you keep asking for that? That means we have to look at something different. And so I feel like it's going to be taking that message and breaking it down in different ways for the sites based on what their starting points are. And making sure the messaging around the matrix and what it is and what it isn't is going to be super, super clear.
Right.
So it doesn't become a point of conflict or contention between you and the sites.
Yes. And so, you know, and that is something that we have struggled to be successful on, like being super clear and having a like clear message from start to end, and especially with something this complex. Just I know we're, you know, everything. The problem is we're working on everything at once. Right, we're working on building up communication, we're working on building this. So just to have that in our mind of how we handle this, because I don't want it to not move forward because of a communication issue. And then the other thing is, I know that we were working on a survey of teachers and staff at some point to get feedback on different things, and was there any questions about discipline? Or were any of the questions that she's asking about what they would like or see, like discipline in their classrooms? Are we asking?
Something that we can add.
Okay.
Right now, it's not added, but it's something that we can definitely.
What's the survey?
There is
a survey of why people left?
No. I thought, Ms. Baca was working on
It's
another.
for the local indicators, to ask for our staff to develop something that is pretty much standardized so that we can measure each year how we are improving. But, the intent of it was more for the California state standards, but I think, like what you're saying, that we could probably add the discipline aspect and other layers to that survey.
And because the discipline piece is part of how we're, graded, whatever, on the dashboard, thank you, so I forget what it's called all the time, that I think it kind of falls into that a little bit. And the reason why I'm bringing it up is, like, part of the rollout I'm hoping is some feedback on what they need before we do anything. Like, can we ask them, what do they need, what do they require? Like, what kind of a PD, is it classroom management, is it this, is it that we can work on and have in place before we roll anything else out.
Especially the discipline matrix. Let's make sure that we've done a few iterations with staff, asking them what they need in terms of discipline.
Right, so I would like this to be more, bottom up about what needs are required in order to do something like this from them, so that we can have those in place first before we do any changes to them.
So are you saying needs in terms of like needs to roll something out, or needs in order like to address discipline?
So what is the goal of the discipline matrix, right? So in order to achieve that goal, what do they need, right? Because we're asking them to look at discipline in a completely different way. What do they need from us in order to do that successfully? Because I don't want to roll it out if they don't have successful tools on how to do this, or even understand the language, right? Do you understand this? Now that they understand it, what do you need from us before we ask you to do this, so that you feel confident in order to move this forward? And then if there's also a way, like, is there a place where this is working successfully and we can field trip out, to see it? Because I think that
to create a common mental model.
Right, because I think we're asking people to visualize something that has never been in place here.
It doesn't exist. Like, we're creating, like, we started this creation process with Jefferson Elementary School District.
Right.
But
no school in California is doing it.
no, like, Circle Up is like, we're like, okay, schools need a new discipline matrix. Let's look at what exists.
Okay.
What exists, and we're like, all of these things are the same. They're just use different language. But at the root of the values and the belief systems of those discipline matrices are like, if this, then this. Like, maybe they add different paragraphs here and there, but it has the same issues. And that's what led us on the journey from all of that feedback to then say, like, okay, like Tyrone sat down with Stephanie Martinez at the elementary school district and was like, so how do we address this problem that keeps happening? And we're like, we gotta reimagine this whole process. Like, let's start with our intentions. And that's how we started creating this. And we're a little bit now like catching up to where they are in terms of creating the matrix at the elementary school district.
I mean, has this been, at the site-specific meetings, has this been discussed, the idea of a discipline matrix?
At the sites?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
No, I'm just curious, just because if we're talking about a bottom-up model, though, at some point, because I'm just looking at the timeline, I'm thinking this is a pretty aggressive timeline.
I just put the time. I was like, they probably want to know like when it's happening.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, really? I'm deleting it right now. Jake, take off the PowerPoint.
Okay. No, this was very helpful to me. Thank you.
Yeah, because there has to be like a level of both. It's like, I think wanting to address conflict and discipline equitably is not something unreasonable.
Right.
Right? There might be barriers that people feel like maybe their needs are different, but when it comes to looking at students, I think it would be the same. But I think the question you bring up of like, what would you actually need to put this in place is a really good question that they would really be happy and appreciative to answer. Like, we need more time, or we need, like, have substitutes available for when I do need to call a student out or a teacher out to prep them to talk with the student after a situation happened in the classroom. Like, I think that would be well received. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I have, unless there's any other questions.
It's a lot.
There was a lot today. Thank you so much.
Yes, you're welcome. You're
Oh,
welcome.
the last thing, and
Yes.
this is just directed towards you, Terry, is that on the meeting on February 6th, if I don't know, I'm asking Terry first before but if it's possible to have Tiffany at that meeting, that would be good.
February 6th.
Which is the equity meeting when Nicole is coming in.
Oh, good idea, because there's lots of meetings. Which meeting are you talking about?
Yeah,
I'll
so,
send
yeah.
you an email tomorrow, Tiffany.
Okay, that sounds good.
You could, for now, can you put a hold on your evening at 5 o'clock on February 6th, maybe from?
Before your birthday, Kalima?
Yep. I always make sure that I have education plans on my birthday.
That's a good birthday present.
That's right. Yeah, that's how I trick people into coming to my party. Let's have a meeting.
Yeah, we're in LCAP.
Yeah.
Equity committee, 5 to 6?
If that's the board meeting, if you want to, I think the meeting with the larger group would be,
We
so
have,
that's 6 to 8 with the equity.
Possibly 2 speakers that night, so.
Can I ask a question? What would be helpful for follow-up communication with you all? Like, I don't know, as needed, like a
Yeah, we have a update that we get every Friday weekly, so if there's any information, if you could send it to Terry and she could stick it in there, we all read that.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay.
And then that would be a good, if we have questions off of that, that will be the channel.
Okay.
Sounds good. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm excused from this.
From the hot seat.
All right, next item on the agenda is consideration of future agenda items. One of the things I was hoping to discuss is for us to have our mid-year review, both as a board and superintendent on the same day. So right now, I'm thinking we should just hold the 29th and 30th. Can everybody just hold?
Yep, that's fine.
Yeah. And then
Which is separate from the meeting that Candace is trying to get, where we can do the LCAP and the budget.
Okay. All right. Okay. Yeah.
The 29th and 30th at 6, just hold those 2 dates.
Of February?
No, January. Yeah.
And I think we also need to look at the February calendar on board meetings, because I know I'm out of town on February 25th.
Yeah.
I think there's
Well,
I think there's some conflicts also with other board members for earlier in the month, so we just need to clarify standard regular meeting calendar.
Okay, so can we send out an email, or we can move it? I don't know if we can move it.
Well, we can move it, but it takes board action.
Okay.
So, because we've already approved those 2 meeting dates, and even the special meeting that was, but February 6th, whatever one it was, if I'm not the macro. But those are all approved by you. You can certainly change them, but it would take board action.
On the
For the
21st?
For the 21st.
Okay, so I'll do it. No, to have it on the 21st meeting. So we'll talk about it at agenda planning. I'll reach out and see which dates need to be moved, and then we can discuss it at next week. Okay. Cool. All right. Unless there's anything else, a motion to adjourn.
To adjourn.
Second. All in favor? Aye. We're adjourned. Thank you.
Krispy Kreme should have one.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.